World Chapter 5. Walking. About a mile off, which would be something I say a lot in the country, someone was coming down the road. Now, even on the best concretes, I hated performing in front of strangers, so I kept my board under my arm as much as possible, hoping my shirt would cover it and I wouldn't get asked, "Hey, do you know any tricks?" by anyone. After a few minutes, I could tell this person was a she. A smooth outline of straight blonde hair stood out from the rest in her slowly growing and recognizable form. She was a bit shorter than me, wore jeans and a hoodie with large yellow letters on the front, most likely from a high school that I would be attending. I felt a weird tinge of nervousness at the bottom of my stomach, like a bad burrito consumed after midnight. But I kept walking. For a split second, I also thought crossing the road, just to avoid having to say hi or even nod like a regular human being. Something I did often in the city to avoid crowds, the odd homeless person talking to themselves. But I figured I might as well say hi and nod, seeing as this might be the neighbor of mine. In a country, your next-door neighbor could be about a mile off. Ha! See? I've started saying it already. As we got closer, we made the weird distant eye contact. We were too far away to speak, yet could see each other's faces, and for the next 40 feet or so, we both tried to look natural, looking at other things on an empty country road. Finally, she was close enough to see, and she spoke first. "You must be Chris," she said with a smile, and the kind of eye contact most people generally avoid these days. She extended her hand for a handshake. She was pretty. Definitely not what I thought I would find on my first skate through the countryside. "Yeah, I am. How did you know my name?" I replied, switching my skateboard to my other arm to finish the handshake. It was weird enough to meet someone on an empty country road, and to be clear, I didn't see the nearest house to ours because it was literally over a hill and far away. And meeting someone who knew me was low on the list of expectations for the day. "Your dad's been talking at church to mine about his kid from Toronto moving into the old Bucksworth house," she said, pointing at the farmhouse I just moved into about half a mile back. "There's not a whole lot of new faces around here, so I put two and two together. I'm Sarah Perro. Nice to meet you." "Chris Weeks, and nice to meet you too." She seemed nice enough. "These roads aren't quite made for those things," she said, nodding to my board. "Yeah, tell me about it." "You skate?" I asked. Please, God, let this pretty girl be a closeted skater with a backyard halfpipe. I'd call it even for the torture so far. She smiled, an almost devilish smile for the briefest of split seconds. "Not on boards. I used to figure skating, the only skating that's common around here. I'm heading to my friend Kylie's house. Want to meet the rest of the neighborhood? Or are you content with your board and crappy chip seal?" she asked. "Is that what they call this crap? I'm actually going to go to my cousin Jay's house." I motioned down the road to where she came from. "I'm assuming you know him too?" "I do unfortunately know him," she said with a sarcastic smirk. "Well, I thought I'd skate here. I thought I'd skate there, but I guess I'm walking. Maybe next time." "Because sure, when a pretty girl asks you to go somewhere, you say no, like the fool that you are, Chris." "Okay, cool. See you Monday," she said with a nod, and continued walking down the road. As I turned to do the same, she more hollered than said, "Bye, Chris," and her flirtatious voice ran down my spine, as if it were a taunt saying, "Hey, stupid, you want to come with me." Part of me did want to go, but the other part of me knew that I didn't know anyone right now, and that Jay, for all intents and purposes, was my only friend. I better go there first before I try to find a girlfriend out here. The rest of the walk was spent trying to figure out which one of the farmhouses on the road was hers, and on the way to Jay's, with no luck, none of them had the sign saying who lived there, and I figured rifling through the mailboxes seemed a little stalkerish for a guy who just moved in down the road. I finally got to Jay's house with about 30 minutes later, and a bit sore from the chip seal, and walking, but was excited to see my cousin. We had hit it off the night before, and I was really hoping he was around just to talk to and hang out. As I stepped into the house, I could hear someone moving in the open garage attached to their house. And sure enough, there was Jay, dressed in hunting camouflage, working on something in the back. "Hey there, cousin," I said, walking through the overhead doors. "Chris, you made it," he said, without looking up from the workbench he was at. "Your mom called. Let me know that you were skateboarding down, just trying to get this 20 gauge working for you." "Yeah, that didn't really work out as planned," I explained. What's a 20 gauge? "It's shotgun," Jay replied. "You're coming coyote hunting with me. I figured I'd break you in easy, give you mom's gun for your first trip." "Your mom has a gun?" I said, bewildered by the idea. "Also, don't I need a license for something like that?" I asked, really unsure about the whole shooting a gun thing. "Seems like something you would need a license for." "Yeah, it's because there's such an overabundance of police officers that'll catch you here with illegal firearms and arrest you for life," he joked. "Fair point," I conceded, more to my understanding of rural New Brunswick's population density than Jay's comeback. "I've never shot one of these things before," I said, and Jay handed me the gun. It was heavier than I expected, but had a smooth finish to the wood and almost felt agile when I held it. "It's unloaded now, but make sure your barrel is pointed at the ground or something you don't mind killing. when we get out there, he said. Shotguns are pretty idiot-proof. Not that you strike me as pretty idiot or anything. He put a camo hat on my head and started walking out the back door of the garage, through the backyard and up the hill behind his house. One of your Uncle Paul's friends owns a hog farm on the other side of this hill. He had a few yearlings go missing last night and suspects a coyote got them. We're going to go see if we can come back and remove them from the equation, he said with a smile. Again, don't we need a license for that? I said, brightly displaying my ignorance of hunting as a sport. Yeah, not for varmints like coyotes. They're fair game on private property, which we'll be on. But for this year's deer season you will, and grouse and bear. There are bears in these woods? I said, scared at the prospect of being mauled by a bear on before my first day of school. Yes, but we have guns in these woods, Jay said with a smile. I think we'll be fine, Chris. Come on, it'll be fun. We finished climbing the hill and set up in a hunting blind made from fallen trees and branches. It overlooked a field between 2 blocks of woods with the pig farm to the left of us. There were 2 antiquated plastic patio chairs behind it and armly surplus netting over the top. We covered ourselves in bug spray and sat in silence for a good long while before Jay whispered, "The key is to let the woods get used to you before you start calling," he said, bringing out a small plastic tube. What followed was the most awful sound I have ever heard in my life, and I had frequented dive bars for underage shows featuring the worst the screamo punk genre has ever had to offer. Made to mimic a dying rabbit, the screeches and yips Jay made from the coyote call sent chills down my spine. After 30 seconds of calling, Jay stopped and lifted his head, trying to hear if the coyotes would respond. His eyes were determined and focused as he listened to the quiet of the woods. He pointed to the large lever on the top of my gun, and after fiddling with it for a bit, the action broke open, revealing a hole, same size as a shell he would hand to me. The gun thankfully only held 1 shot. I was hoping I wouldn't have to use it, and Jay reached over, cocked the hammer, and said quietly, "Finger off the trigger." And then he showed me on his rifle what he meant by tapping the circular guard on the rifle with his finger on the straight line. There were some sounds from the adjacent woods, and Jay lifted his gun to look through the scope. He slipped through a small reed into his mouth and tried a different call, one that sounded more like a kitten, and after about 30 seconds of that, 3 coyotes would emerge from the woods, looking for the prey in distress that Jay was mimicking. "Shoot the closest one if they cross the field," he whispered, and then he moved his aim to the one in the back. My eyes widened as the 3 wild dogs came closer and closer, trotting towards the blind with Jay's mewling. They were smaller than I thought a coyote would be, kind of a medium-sized German shepherd with comically bigger ears. They yipped to each other with a nervous, scattered gallop into the field between us. I lined up the shotgun as best I could. Best I could figure out, and waited for what I hoped would be the right moment. As the first one got close to about 50 feet away, Jay said, "Now," and I shot. The gun kicked my shoulder like a mule and sent me back off the creaky plastic chair. I didn't hit the first coyote at all. I missed by a country mile, that's for sure, and it ran full tilt back towards the woods behind me. The last one, however, caught Jay shot in the chest and dropped like a sack of bricks. Jay stood up and racked the bulk of his rifle, aiming for the second one. I just tried to pick myself up to the ground while keeping the now unloaded gun from pointing at Jay or myself. The shots from Jay's gun were way louder than mine, an ear-splitting crack like being too close to lightning when it strikes. He caught the running dog with a shot in the middle across the back, and it dropped the same way. And he racked another bullet into the chamber, aiming for the third that was almost at the woods, the one I missed. I stood up to see the final shot, and he hit the hindquarters of it, stopping it, but not killing it. "Shit," he hissed. "Bring the shotgun." He started walking towards the crying, dying coyote. He left his gun in the blind, and I would later find out that guns are only allowed to have 3 bullets in them. And he had only brought 3 shots for each of us. My gun, being a single-shot model, was the fastest to redeploy. I grabbed the gun and opened it, and we both walked down to the wounded animal, pulling the smoking spent shell out of the chamber. Jan handed me another round. "Finish him off," he said. "What?" I said, trying to keep both my distance and keep the gun pointed at the wounded and flailing dog. "You need to finish him off," Jay insisted. "It's cruel to let him die from a bad shot like that." I fumbled the lever open and loaded the gun and armed the hammer that Jay had earlier, and I got the shotgun ready and went to aim. The coyote was writhing on the ground, trying to get the bullet at his lower back legs, whining like a dog who got swatted by its owner. "Don't close your eye," Jay said. Keep both your eyes open with the shotgun. Aim for the dog in the middle." I tried to center the wounded dog between the 2 barrels I now saw trying to aim the shotgun with my eyes open and prepared my shot. My eyes crossed in a weird way that I'd never experienced before, and the tip of the gun bracketed the dog perfectly. My heart raced, and my crying dog sent shivers down my spine. I'd never been that close to a wild and potentially dangerous animal before, and I certainly had never killed one either. I pulled the trigger and felt the kick of the gun on my shoulder. The wild dog died as the shot hit true, a large hole of bright red gore where its neck and head used to be. And then I bent over and threw up. As accurate a description of your first hunting experience, if you're not prepared for it, as you're ever going to get. I took it from a bunch of different sources, not from me, but definitely one of the more interesting scenes that I tried to put into this book. Hope you guys liked it.